Hello and welcome to Rosie's Preserving School. Today we're going to be looking at mincemeat. We're coming up to Christmas and it's an ideal time to get mincemeat made. A lot of people don't bother, they just buy it. But as we go through this, you'll understand why I feel quite strongly about the reasons that you shouldn't buy it. It is a kind of typically British preserve. I admit that, but it is delicious and it is worth making your own. If you make your own, it will keep for at least a year and even longer. And you can use it on all sorts of things, not just at Christmas, but throughout the year as well. And after Christmas, in the colder months, when I'm having porridge for breakfast, I like to have it on that, actually. It's very, very nice. I'm going to talk about the history of mincemeat as we go through the different ingredients, but it first came to our shores in the UK in about the 1500s, mainly because it was the first opportunity for the ships to bring all the fabulous ingredients from around the world back to what was then the royal court. And the royal court were the only people that had those ingredients and used them. And they used them to their political advantage, as you might well imagine. We've drifted very, very far from that because the ingredients were so special. All the vine fruits that had never been seen, the citrus fruits, the oranges and lemons, all of those kinds of things, all the spices had never been seen. And they all came together in a great big show-off event of the royal court and the various courtiers and the hangers-on within the royal court, producing a delicacy that could show off all these things. And we had the mince pie. It was much, much bigger. It was the size of a great big round pie. They were often gilded and highly decorated, and they would only be offered to special people, of course. They wouldn't be offered to the sort of riffraff out in the streets. And so I sort of look at that two ways. You know, it's rather lovely that all these things sort of converge together to make this special pie. But I think if you were a receiver of that pie, it would make you feel very, very special because it was being bestowed on you as a very special thing. But we've drifted from that, haven't we? This is what we have today. We have a box of pies. This box actually is a year old. I've had it a long time. Nothing has happened to the pies because they're so synthetic that there's nothing that wants to eat them, to be honest. Usually the box disintegrates before the pies do, but we've got 6 manufactured pies in here with their mincemeat, and they are sold in this country for £1. Now, I think if you can buy something like that, when you look at the ingredients we're going to use and the difference in the flavour, to be able to buy them for £1 is sort of, well, it's monstrous, really. And also, they are very, very synthetic. I've counted the ingredients in the ingredients list on the back of this packet, and there are 33. And about half of them, well over half of them, are just preservatives and additives and everything, which means that these pies can keep practically forever. Now, I know that I'm in the preserving world and I'm trying to keep things for a long time. The mincemeat we're going to make will keep a very long time, but you shouldn't be able to keep pastry for over a year or more. That just isn't a chemical or chemistry thing, you know. I'm sure if you made your own pastry, it's delicious for a couple of days and then that's it. It goes hard and doesn't taste very nice, but that's as it should be. You should eat them fresh. I've got a friend who works in this world, and so many of you have heard me say this before, but she always says, if you buy some processed food in a box, just eat the box. It will be better for you. So with that thought, I'll leave those there. But I think it's sad that we've now come from that very special, all those lovely ingredients being offered with, you know, to the special people, but it was offered with some sort of meaning behind it. And now we've got a box of pies like that we heat up in the microwave. And understandably, when you offer them round, nobody really wants to eat them because they think A, they're going to be too hot in the middle, and B, they've tasted it all before. So now this is our chance to sort of reverse a bit of that. So, and it's not difficult. Now we're going to make now Marjorie's mincemeat, and that comes from the name of the plums that I used when I first wrote the recipe. So Marjorie isn't a sort of dumpy sort of farmer's wife somewhere, you know, that made this up in 200 years ago. This is my recipe, and it comes from the name of the plums. But don't think you can't make it if you haven't got Marjorie plums. You can, it's just a type of plum. Any plums will do. Now, I did say to you, if you were cooking, you would need to cook the plums first before the class, because we wouldn't have time to cook them and puree them and everything. So I've got mine done in the pan, and they're all, the puree is in the pan. And we're going to carry on now and add the other ingredients. Now I've got 3 cooking apples here, which are going to go in, and the apples in mincemeat help to keep it moist, and they absorb the juices from the base and all the rest of it, and it all melds together. So I'm going to cut up my apples. A lot of you seen me that do this before. I cut round the clock, and then I cut out the core in sort of one go if I can, and then I run the knife down the outside to peel it, and it all gets done in one fell swoop. So that one's a bit wide. Now this is not like the mincemeat I made in a previous class. I am going to make that again for you after I've done this one. This recipe is suitable for vegans. It doesn't have any fat, doesn't have suet or butter or anything, but it still keeps wonderfully well. As I say, I have this on my porridge. I've got some that is, well, I'm not even sure it was last year's. It might have been the year before, to be honest. Make sure the apple is cut quite small, because it doesn't have a lot of time to cook down. And if you leave it, if the pieces are too big, then you know, they're going to be a bit unpleasant in your whatever you use them for. Just cut the peel off as economically as you can. Oops, throwing it everywhere. Then I cut it in half lengthways, and then cut across again, so it's not too tedious a job. These are some of the last of my cooking apples out of the garden. I'm sort of racing against time. They're stored outside, and if I don't get them done soon, something else will eat them in the winter. I'm probably more desperate than we are. There's only a few to go. Right. Here's my bin. Take that off the mat. Put that in. I'm going to turn my heat on low-ish. Otherwise, if you heat it up too hot too fast, it will all start spitting at me. And so, but just get it going. This is a lovely sort of fruity flavour to this mincemeat. And sometimes I think mincemeats can be quite rich, and sometimes you don't want layers and layers of rich food in one go. I don't think Christmas gets a bit overdone, doesn't it, food wise? So this is a nice lighter flavour. I showed you the quince that I bought last week. I've made some of them into another new mincemeat recipe, which I call quince meat, and that is using quince as the base. It's got lots of ginger in it, different fruits, and I'll be publishing that well, ready for next year's quince class actually, but it'll be around before then. I just don't quite know when at the moment because I've had rather a lot to get through, but it's turned out rather nice, and even though I don't particularly like quince, I enjoyed trying it. Right, one to go. Gosh, I feel as though I've been peeling apples forever this autumn. We had such a nice crop that every spare minute I get, I'm peeling apples. And I've looked at the different sort of bits of kit there are for peeling them, but I don't really find any of them easy. By the time you set it all up, you might just as well do it with a knife. And then it doesn't do the whole thing. You've got to sort of take off the bits it's missed and all the rest of it. So it's on after with these things, I think. Right, put that one in as well. Get some heat into it now. Stir the apples in. So they can start cooking. It smells lovely actually with the plums as the base. Right, so we can start looking at the vine fruits now as they're known, and that applies to all the things like raisins and sultanas and currants and that kind of thing, because they come from different grapes and berries, so that's why they're called that. So we've got the orange. Actually, I need 2 oranges. You can get me another orange. No, I just weigh it as it is, Suzanne. Just Is it Suzanne? No, it's Betsy. Sorry. The 500 grams of apple, I weigh it at the sort of starting stage. Right, so we've got 2 oranges, so we've got our citrus fruit. It's strange now looking at it, isn't it, to think how special it was, because nobody had seen them before, and they were just unbelievably expensive, but they're so ubiquitous now in the things that we make, and we do rather take them for granted, which is a shame. Now I'm going to zest them first, because it's always easiest to take the zest off while the fruit is whole before you squeeze it for juice. So I've got one of these microplane graters, which whilst they're terrifying, you need to keep your fingers away from them. They do an excellent job. So really it's that old adage of, you know, having sharp knives. Mistakes happen because knives and things like that are blunt. As long as you're respectful of it, it shouldn't come to any harm. Keep it covered, of course, when it's being stored in a drawer. Nothing worse than putting your hand into a drawer to take something out and catching it on something sharp. If you're thinking of selling at you know, market stalls or school fetes and all that kind of thing, I can recommend getting a juicer. It's quite painful. This is the reason I bought my electric juice, citrus juicer, is because my hands got so tired trying to squeeze the juice out of all these citrus fruits, and it saves a lot of time and a lot of pain. Of course, I'm not using it tonight. So there's all the zest. Make sure you get the zest off the back of the grater. That's all going to go in a minute. That's all pure flavour there. It's all full of citrus oils. That's where all the oil is stored. You can see just left on this orange here, all these little pitted bits are a little oil well of the oils that the fruit has. It's all in the peel, which is why you should always try and take it off, save it. Even if you take it off and air dry it on kitchen paper and store it in a jar, you can then use it in baking and that kind of thing. Don't just throw the squeezed halves away with their peel in place. So that's one, and that can go in. Starting to bubble, which is good. The other thing the electric juicer does, it's very efficient at getting every last little bit of juice out of it as well. There's nothing left in the shell when they're finished, so they're good to use. In fact, I wished I got it out to use. Never mind. All right. And I'll try and pour that in without getting the pips in there as well. So, take them out because I'll need to use that again in a minute. And put the zest in. Another stir. Right, so moving to our vine fruits, we need 300 grams of raisins, and these are my new favourite raisins, which I talked about last week, which are the flame raisins. They're from the flame red grapes that you get, the seedless ones, and they're absolutely gorgeous to eat, you know, just by the handful, like the actual grapes are. We want 300 grams of those. Don't worry if it's a bit over, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be exact. That's our raisins, our sultanas, which is 300 as well. Yeah. And our currants. Which is 300. Right, now apricots, chopped. I bought them chopped, cheated slightly. If you've got the ready to eat ones, just cut them up into 4 to 6 pieces and put them in. So it's 150 grams of apricots, yeah. And my dried cranberries, which I haven't got, I'll just fetch those. Oh, there was right to the front. Oh dear. Now these are dried cranberries, but they're soaked in apple juice. That's how they came, which are rather nice. So that's another 150 grams. Get some more of those. Yummy. So we'll put all of those in so they can start to be softening. Orange is smelling lovely. So just put all of those dried fruits in and give it a good stir. And they'll start to soak up the plum juice and the citrus juice. It all becomes one sort of melded flavour. Right. I'm going to put the stem ginger in next. I've got the ginger that we made in the class, but you can just as easily buy it. So you need 4 pieces of stem ginger. Turn that down a bit, it's going a bit mad. Let's heat it up. 2, this jar's going down rather quickly. I'll have to be making some more soon. So it was easy to do, wasn't it? So slice it down. You don't have to do super small pieces. We don't want sort of chefy. Well, if you can do chefy chopping, by all means do, but I can't, so I don't. That's all right, Betsy, it doesn't matter. You'll catch up. don't get stressed, because I should be, you know, doing other things. So you can just carry on cooking it for as long as you need to. Hi, Rachel. Fresh ginger or dry crystallized? I would use the crystallized, Elizabeth. Yeah, be a bit sweeter. The fresh would be a bit harsh, I think. All right in a chutney, but not what you want to bite into in a nice mince pie, probably. So the ginger can go in. There again. I turn mine right down now because it's starting to not stick to the bottom, but it gets quite hot, and it can be a bit dry at the bottom if you're not careful. Right, now that's all of our fruits and so on in. If you want to add cherries or nuts, and you know you're confident that people that you're going to give it to can eat it, you know, there's no nut allergies and all that sort of thing, then go ahead. I don't add nuts to my things, as I've told you before, because I sometimes sell the products and I get very nervous of people not reading labels properly, and then, you know, there's a mishap, and I don't want anyone to be ill. So I don't put them in. I don't cook with them unless unless the whole thing is nuts, if you know what I mean, so that they're completely obvious. But in mincemeat, you wouldn't necessarily know, and some people wouldn't check, even if they do have a nut allergy. Believe me, I had some near misses. So just be careful, you know, with that. But if you and your family love nuts and so on, then just go ahead and put some in. Piece of so it's all becoming a lovely colour now. We haven't put the sugar in yet. I'm going to do that in a moment. We've also got our spices. I've got mixed spice. Now the mixed spice that I made well, it's probably back in the summer, I made some mixed spice in the spice mill, which is absolutely lovely. It's gone off to the photo shoot, so I'm using a bought mixed spice. So I always use more, because once spice is ground, it starts to lose its the height of its flavours. It's better to grind them fresh and use them fresh. So when I'm using commercial mixed spice, I always overdo it because they always tend to be a bit weaker. Not so the nutmeg. I've got some whole nutmeg here. Again, a very unprepossessing sort of thing. We don't think anything of it. But at the time I'm talking of, in the Middle Ages, when all of these things were becoming you know, they were newly arrived on these shores, the nutmeg achieved dizzying heights of value, really. It was more valuable than gold, and it was illegal for anybody outside of the royal court to own a nutmeg, because you clearly couldn't have come by it legally. And people were put into Newgate jail and all sorts of things for owning nutmeg. Thankfully, we're not like that today, and we can grind it fresh and use it in our mincemeat, which I'm going to do in a moment. Got a couple of questions. Brenda loathes currants. You can just double up on something else, Brenda, or you can add something different. As I said before, it's not baking. You don't have to have specific, you know, amounts of each thing. I try and write the recipes so they're a nice blend, but just leave it out. And if you like nuts, make it up with nuts, or make it up with extra raisins or something like that, or some of the other fruits. You know, don't fret about it, or just leave it out. I mean, it won't matter. You'll still end up with plenty of mincemeat. Elizabeth's asking about fresh or dried cherries. Either. I haven't got the opportunity for fresh cherries at the moment, so mine are the glacé cherries, but they're organic and naturally coloured cherries. They're not the sort of bright red sticky things that, you know, are on the supermarket shelves. I don't use those. Mixed spice, Elizabeth. It's a mixture of all different spices like cloves and allspice. I'm trying to think what else is in it. I can write it out and put it somewhere so you can read it, but I just grind them all together in a spice grinder. I don't know if it says on here what's in it. Cinnamon, coriander, allspice, cloves, ginger and nutmeg. So we put the ginger in, so we wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you've got ground cinnamon, cloves, that kind of thing, then just put some in according to what you like. It's important that you put things like spices that you like and don't use things that you hate, because you'll have a resistance to actually using what you are making. So don't worry about it too much. But the mixed spice I made, rather than buying like that one, is delicious. So I'll try and not sure where I can put the recipe. I could put it on the, can we put it on the classes page somewhere? Yeah, we'll do that afterwards. It will appear in due course if you want to make some. Right, so we need to measure our sugar. And I've got soft brown sugar there, light brown sugar for this one, not too dark. And we need 250 grams of that. I'll put my scales on again. This is the last weighing. I love the smell of this sort of sugar. It's this is a soft sugar, not a demerara, the crunchy one. I mean, if that's all you've got, use that. It's not an issue, it will dissolve, but this soft brown is lovely. And I was trying to keep the colour a little bit lighter, not to overwhelm the plums. There we go, 250 grams, that goes in. Yeah, right, just on the mixed spice. So put your sugar in and stir that well. It will automatically make things a little bit more liquid. Sugar always does do that. So you can see it started to move around a bit more. But again, the fruit will soak that up, especially when it's in the jar. We'll do the spices in a minute. I've said this before, that when I was a girl, after the schools went back in September, my mother and her friends would have been buying these dried fruits and things for the Christmas cakes and the mincemeat and so on, because they're all much of a muchness with the ingredients. It's just a different format, isn't it? You know, made into a cake or a pudding or the mincemeat. But they would buy the fruit, which was expensive, and store it. And then once we all got back to school, then they would start making the things for Christmas. So it's a bit of a different world now, thankfully. You know, it's not quite as expensive as it was. And it's a bit more readily available than it was just after, because I was born in the 50s after the Second World War, and you know, you still couldn't get things that readily. So, but it always marked a sort of particular time in the year. So Tracy's asking, can you use frozen plums? Yeah, just use their frozen weight. It's on the recipe sheet, Tracy. You don't have to use fresh plums. I use frozen. I put them in, cook them from frozen. I just put about a teacup full of water with them, just so they didn't all stick to the bottom of the pan like frozen fruit does. And just to sort of free it up a bit, or you can thaw them out and then cook them, either way, whichever you prefer. Right, mixed spice. We're going to put in 2 teaspoonfuls at least. I'll take the top off because I can't get the cap open. So I'm going to use my tablespoon here, and I'm going to put a heaped tablespoonful because, as I said, the bought commercial one is not as strong as if you make it from scratch. So that can go in. That's a game changer, really. Once that goes in, it all starts to smell like the real deal. And then finally, the nutmeg. Now, I've got my little nutmeg grinder here, which we have on the website. You don't have to have a nutmeg grinder, but when you make a lot of these sorts of things, it saves you fingernails, you know, when you're trying to grate nutmeg on the side of a grater. So we use our little grinder. What I do is, the recipe nearly always says a tablespoon, because that's what I usually put. But I just, once you've had a look at that, I'll open it up and show you. Inside is the nutmeg, and I just keep on turning the handle till no more nutmeg comes out, and that is my tablespoonful. So you can see it sort of raining down, landing on the top of the mincemeat. It's so much easier. Oh, it should be. Smells amazing, and again, you get so much more flavour than if you buy ready ground nutmeg. There we are. Stir that in, and then we just need to leave it to cook for probably another 10 minutes, and then we can jar it up. The apple is all softening lovely. Doesn't need to be completely softened and gone, but it needs to be sort of several steps above raw. So I'm just going to clean up slightly here so that I can show you my next bit. So you can just carry on cooking. Remind me to put some, I've got port in the recipe, but I haven't got any port. I'm going to put brandy in, but if you've got port and you want to use it, do so. You don't have to put anything in. It will still keep beautifully without booze in it, but it just sort of rounds it off and gives it a nice flavour if you like it. If you prefer other things like rum, brandy or whiskey, then you know, just do that. It's just a guide. Just going to rinse my hands. Right, well, that's just cooking a bit more. I'm going to show you, if I can find it. I'm going to make some of my luxury mincemeat that is in my recipe site, recipes.rosiemakesjam.com, which was my original mincemeat recipe, and it's made with butter and has a very delicious flavour because of that. Traditionally, people use suet. I mean, mincemeat originally had meat in it, which is why they called it that. Thankfully, that's gone. But some people still like to use suet in their mincemeat. I like to use butter. The butter recipe is an ancient recipe, which I've adapted. So it's not a newfangled thing. It keeps very, very well, at least 2 years. The recipe on the website has got about 2 pounds of everything in it, or 900 grams, which makes it a lot of mincemeat. And that's the recipe I use when I'm making it for the shop. You can put, as you know, with the recipe site, you can adjust one of the main ingredients, and all the vine fruits are the same measurement, so you can just pick one of them. And the recipe will scale, so all the other ingredients will change. So you can cut it down. You could halve it so that you make this sort of quantity in the plum one we're doing now tonight. It's just, I would keep meaning to change it on the site. Now, I cooked this earlier. This is a whole pack of 250 grams of butter and 3 cooking apples. It's solidified again, but when I put it on the heat, it will all melt. I just did that because as I said, I was going to have 2 hobs going, but I just knew I wouldn't have enough room. So to save time, I've cooked the apple in the butter, which is what you do. That's what the recipe is. You melt the butter, you put in the apple and soften the apple. Then you can add the rest of your ingredients, which are under here, which alarmingly look like a whole bowl of muscovado sugar, but actually the vine fruits are underneath. And it's basically 450 grams of the same raisins, currants, sultanas, and 450 grams of muscovado sugar. I don't put other things in. I don't put the apricots and that kind of thing, or ginger. You could put nuts if you want to. You could put cherries if you want to. But this recipe has less ingredients, but it still makes a fabulous mix. If you want to put mixed peel in, and you've made some of your own, you can chop that and put that in. I wouldn't suggest that you buy mixed peel to put in it, because we've discussed that. It's not really worth buying. It's got nothing in it that is in the mixed peel that we made. So just be aware of the ingredients. I'm going to put the zest and the juice of 1 orange and 1 lemon as well, and nutmeg and the mixed spice. So more or less the same, but with a base, a butter base. This is the one suitable for vegans with no fat in at all. And not just vegans, a lot of people are cutting back or need to cut back for various reasons. And so to have a fat-free mincemeat is luxurious, I think. It's nice. They don't have to miss out on everything. You can just have the delicious plum-based one. And those of you that are cooking along, I expect you've noticed, you wouldn't know now that there are plums in that pan. It's all melded into one lovely mix. So I'm going to put this pan onto the heat in a moment. If you're not ready to jar up now, don't worry, you can carry on cooking. And I just want to show the jarring up for our new people who will need to see what's what. So I'm going to take this one off. You can see how it looks, beautifully thick. All that plum puree is mixed in. Elizabeth says it's very thick. You could add, if you've got another orange, you could add the juice of an orange, Elizabeth, or you could add a little bit of water, but not too much because it will alter the chemistry of it. I mean, mine is very thick. There's no sort of residual juices there really to speak of. So, right, well, I'm going to put that down on my heat mat. And then I'm going to put this one I did earlier with the butter onto the heat, and you'll see that butter will melt again. And then when we can put the other right, I'm going to get my zesting done while it's doing that. We've got a lemon in this one. Thank you. Nice big lemon. That's the lemon. To the orange. Very close the back again. Yeah, Rachel, we'll be putting that in a minute when just before we jar up. I just want to get this other one on the go. Right. The butter is starting to melt, so that's good. With its apple in there. I'll put this zest in. Right, now, if you think yours is ready to jar up, and it will look like mine, it's all thoroughly heated and cooked. And once it's in the jar, it will also absorb more of the flavours. So you don't need to cook it and cook it and cook it till it's dry. You need it as moist as possible. Neither of these mincemeats take very long to make, which is why I'm recklessly starting another one. So put the fruit juice in. Doesn't matter which order you put the things in. Oh, can't get it to go onto the pointy bit. I'll show you the jarring up once all these ingredients are in. Don't panic. If you think it's ready, just either leave it on a very low heat or just take it off. It will be fine. The lemon. And then all my fruits and my sugar and everything are all in this pan. I'm going to put the whole lot in. As I say, the recipe is on the recipe site, so you can easily do this one if you want to. Mix that in. The sugar will add to the liquid in a moment. My mixed spice is going in. And my nutmeg. Into my sticky mats and things. Stir the spices in. Right, going back to the one, plum mincemeat. I'll just show you the other one at the end. So we've seen how it should look. I think you saw some shots of that. Just get out of the way. You'll only need to water bath if you need to seal the jars, Elizabeth. Elizabeth's in America and very often has two-part lids, and if that's the case, then, but only do it for sort of like 10 minutes just to seal the jar. That won't apply to us here. Karis is saying, is this the luxury mincemeat recipe we made last year? Yes, it is. I hope you enjoyed it, Karis. Yeah, good. And she's vouching for the fact that it does last and keep well. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put in brandy. And as you know, I don't measure it. I just put a splosh in to give it flavour. Stir that in. I don't usually add alcohol to hot things. I usually put it in the jar, but with mincemeat, when you jar it up, it's not liquid like marmalade or something like that, and it would all stay at the bottom rather than rising up through the liquid. Well, Tracy loved the luxury one too. Good. Right, so we're going to jar up now. Just stir my other one. So like spinning plates here. As the sugar dissolves, that's getting more liquid. And the butter melts. You can see the difference if I put the two pans together. This is the plum one, this is the luxury one. This is no less luxurious, but you can't have the same name on everything. Right, so for our newbies who need to jar up, I've got my jars here. best to wash them and have them warm. I don't have them warm because it would mean I'd have to have the oven on, and then it makes a noise over the filming. So pretend they're hot or warm. Just put them in the oven on 50 to 100 degrees, or gas mark 1, I guess, just to dry them off after washing and warm them up a bit. But so you probably need something like a dinner knife. As well. I'm using my jam funnel so I don't make a mess everywhere. Hey, Rachel's got one now. So it's not going to flow like jam, so you do have to sort of ease it into the jar a bit. Use a, whatever this is called, ladle, if you've got one, and spoon it in. If you haven't got a funnel, then either get one for next time, or you know, be careful, because it will, you know, go down the outside of the jar if you're not careful. So you have to sort of force it in a bit. And the reason I've got a knife is just to poke it down through the funnel and also get rid of any air pockets. Now, if I'm quick, I can probably move that funnel without it all. So we've got our jar here. Just a moment, I'm just going to check it to see where the air pockets are. You can see there are some air pockets there, and you want to get rid of those. So once you've filled the jars, just go round with your knife without spooning it all over the table, and get rid of the air pockets if you can. And this is true of any preserve. You don't want to seal it up with air pockets inside, as air pockets mean moisture, and moisture means mold in you know, in some cases. Once you've done that, the level might have gone down a bit, so just top it up. It needs to be full to the top of the jar. No air gaps at the top. Then you put your lid on. And it will keep, because as it cools down, it will shrink slightly, and it will create a vacuum in which nothing can grow, hopefully. And it's got such a high sugar content that it's inhospitable to mold. It's moisture that creates mold, which is why you don't want it to be too watery. So I'll go on filling some jars while this one cooks. Oops. I was just thinking this would be nice with some cherries in, but actually it's got the cranberries in, so that's probably enough. And I hope you like this version. It's very, very fruity. And as I say, I have it on my porridge because it's nice and fruity. Okay. Please don't bang it on the table to get rid of the air pockets, because it's too thick. It isn't going to move that much. You need to actually remove the air pockets yourself. And banging it on the table can mean that it breaks the jar, as I know from quite an eventful WI meeting I was teaching at. We had hot raspberry jam and broken glass everywhere. I had asked them not to do it, but nobody takes any notice of me, so I'll just do one more, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about next week. while you're jarring up. So I think you could make these as a sort of double gift pack, you know, one of each sort, or put them in hampers and things like that. And don't just keep mincemeat for Christmas. You can have it all through the year. And when you think about the ingredients, they're all of the vine fruits and spices and things like that. You can use it in a cake mix if you've got, you know, you make a plain cake. You can stir it through to add the fruit and the spices and everything. That's rather nice. My mother used to make big open mincemeat tarts for Sunday lunch. We would have it and she'd roll the pastry in a lattice across the top, that kind of thing. We had it stuffed in apples, baked in the oven. As I've said, I have it on porridge. You can make, you can even stir it through, especially this fruity one. I wouldn't perhaps use the buttery one, but the fruity one you could stir through ice cream and then pop it back in the freezer for a few minutes, like a mincemeat ripple. You know, there's all sorts of things. You don't have to just think it's got to go into a mince pie. In fact, I'll show you a bit further on with something else. What I tend to do is use either puff pastry, or you could use short crust or phyllo pastry, layers of it in those little small tins, you know, the muffin tins with the small size cups. Push the pastry in, put your teaspoon of mincemeat in and bake it. And if you hand those round, they're much easier to eat because you can eat it as one mouthful. You're not sort of trying to balance a drink and a mince pie and all the mincemeat's falling out and everything. Just, you know, keep it small, just a taste. And then the people who don't really want to eat a whole mince pie, as in, you know, the size that you get, you know, they'll feel they've had a taste of it, but it's not overwhelming, because sometimes it can just all be too much over Christmas, I think. So I'm going to jar the rest of that up afterwards. I'm going to put some brandy into this one as well, so that it's got its brandy in. Next week, we're going to be making all kinds of drinks for Christmas that you can serve instead of having to have sort of cupfuls of different spirits. Now, they're mostly spirit-based, but on the recipe sheet, you won't get the recipe, you'll get the ingredients for each of the drinks and some guidance on what equipment you might need. There's about 8, I think. So you can have a look through. You don't have to cook them all. You don't have to cook any of them if you don't want to. I should be making them all. So you'll see the method, and it's all much of a muchness, you know, it's repetition really. But I've done the recipes, or what would be the recipe sheet, the download, and we'll put that up so that you can be looking at it straight away. And then I've tried to limit the different sorts of spirits you'd need, because you don't need masses of it, so you can kind of group it together and just do one that's vodka based, or one that's brandy based, or something like that. Or you might have some bottles in the cupboard that you've partly used and you don't drink very much, and you can use them up. But there's all sorts of things that we're going to be doing. You've still got time to make them all for Christmas, either as gifts, or if you've got a house full, it's nice to have a selection, and especially if you've made them yourself. So next week will be full on. It might take a bit longer than normal. We might finish a bit later. I suggest you have a notebook with you. You'll have what the ingredients are for each one and what you need in way of equipment to make it. So it's just jotting down what you do with it, really. I thought it would get too confused. It would have run, there's 3 sheets to download, and it would have run into about 6 or 8 if I'd written out each recipe in its entirety. You'll soon get the hang of it, and it's well worth doing. It's a bit of fun, and a bit of an eye-opener as well, actually. So I think Karis made some last year, or at least was on the classes when I did the run up to Christmas last year. So she'll know what I'm talking about. But have you tasted it, Rachel? Is it all right? Thumbs up. So that's good. So, okay, I'll see you next week, hopefully, and we'll have some fun cooking up some drinks, and have a good week and enjoy the mincemeat. You don't have to keep it for Christmas. You can start it before if you want. And I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you for listening and watching.